Hello and welcome back to the studio. Now I've just been sorting out a pile of sketchbooks which I worked on last year, and I thought what I would do in this short film is to flip through just one of the sketchbooks, and the one I've chosen is this one. It's a small 5x7 watercolour book which I used for most of August last year. So I'll talk you through some of the sketches within this book that I did out in the open around here locally in Teasdale and a little bit further afield. So let's have a look. Actually, the first one's a very simple pencil drawing that I did way back in the year when I was using this book at the start, and it was just a simple drawing, but we'll skip past that one. The first one is a pen and wash drawing which I did when I was over in Swaledale. It was a lovely scene that I saw, a nice leading line going through to this old barn at Muka in Swaledale. It's a popular area for walking, and I just sat there on, let's say this was the first of the month, and I sat there and did this small pen and wash, and I liked the way it came out. The greens and the greys really worked well together, and the detail that I put in on the rocks came out well. I don't do an awful lot of pen and wash. I'd like to do more, and I will do this year. But yeah, I was pleased with that. I put it up on social media and it got a great response. Next one's just a pencil and watercolour wash drawing of this lovely old hen house up on Cockfield Fell here in Teasdale. And I remember doing this one. It was stood up. Sometimes I can sit down to do these sketches, but this one was stood up, which means that I generally don't spend so much time on them. I do them fairly quickly. This probably took about 10 or 15 minutes to produce. A nice simple drawing with the hens. I could hear them inside. They were clucking away. That was a nice one to do. I love the old wood and the stonework piled up next to it. Next, this is quite close. This is also in Teasdale. We have quite a lot of these old farmhouses which are falling apart, and it's a shame really, but this one had a lot of character to it. It had sort of two houses at right angles to each other, and I leant on a wall to do this one and did this very simple pencil drawing first with a little bit of colour added in while I stood there on a reasonable day. For this next one, this is only about half a mile from my house here, and what I loved about this was the sky. It was a lovely sunny summer sky, but it built up into a lot of cloud, and I was out on a normal walk that I do with my dog, and I came across this view, and it's actually a house that I know really well because we lived right next to it a couple of years ago, and I painted this because I loved the sky, so I gave the sky a lot more area than what I would normally do, and made the colours quite strong, and I think that one turned out really quite well. This is the paper that works well with this wet and wet technique on the sky. This paper I think is a Bockingford, £140. I got this sketchbook some years ago, and it's been sitting around doing nothing, and I was able to use it throughout the month of August last year. Again, this is another local scene. The two houses, the one past and this, are almost next door neighbours, but it just faces a different way, and I like the white gable end and the nice shape of the buildings, the way they work together, these barns and the house with a little porch on the front. A little bit more gentle in the colours in this one, but still a nice picture. A little bit further afield, this is down the road east towards a village called Barningham, and I walked up onto the moor, and this is fairly early on the month, but the sun was out and then the heather was in bloom, so the colours really worked well, but there was this nice dramatic sky forming away in the distance looking back towards where I live at Bowes. And then this, which is a grouse butt, a stone built grouse butt, sits right on the edge of the moor and made a quite nice composition. I travelled a little bit further afield for this one, over the hill into the Yorkshire Dales, and this is in Dale, which is a tributary of Swaledale, and I like this subject matter. It's an old, it's not a barn, it's what they call a powder house. It was used for storing gunpowder and explosives while they were doing the lead mining in years past. It's obviously not used now. Door was open on it, but it's got a lovely shape, and there was a nice bit of sunshine coming down from the left, and I sat there for, I don't know, it was probably half an hour, 40 minutes doing this one. It was just a lovely scene. Again, an area which I know really well and very handy to me here in Teasdale. Just nice to travel a little bit further afield every now and then. For this one, I travelled up towards High Force, which is past Middleton in Teasdale, and I knew of this barn, but I'd never been to see it. So I had a wander down one day, again a nice afternoon, and I did a pen and wash of this. I started doing just a watercolour with a bit of pencil and then added the colour in, but I used the pen to give some definition to some of the detail in the brickwork, and I think it worked quite well. I think I've just said the pen and wash isn't something that I normally do, but I do enjoy doing it, and I'm inspired by it. There's a chap, if you haven't seen him, on YouTube and Instagram who I've been watching. I admire his work from Yorkshire. His name's John Harrison, and I'll put a link down to his YouTube channel, and he's very good at teaching and demonstrating how to do pen and washes. He does them better than me, but like everything in life, it's a learning process. Next we have, this was travelling further afield. I had to go and deliver some books over towards the Lake District, and this was in the middle of the month, and there's a lovely scene in the village of Elterwater, which is in Great Langdale, and I pulled up in the car park to go and do a bit of work business wise, and I saw this scene of the cottage. It's a view that I know really well, and I thought I'd just do this drawing. And as I started doing it, I started putting some watercolour on. It started to rain, so I hid or sheltered under the tree and completed the work under the tree. Again, a little bit of watercolour, well, a lot of strong watercolour, and then highlighted it with pen and ink, pen and wash, as I say. Again, worked out well. Nice composition, that one. Close to home, this is a straightforward watercolour, and it's of a bit of old ancient woodland that we've got up here called West Plantation, an area which I love because it's got old Scots pines, matured deciduous trees, and then the heather with this track leading through it. And I see this and I think I'll do a little sketch of it, but I see potential here of maybe put some sheep in it, or some deer, or even some grouse. We get all of those up in this little patch of land. I like going up there, and it's just up the hill from me. Very close to me is this scene. It's called Mill Force, and it's on the River Greeter, which flows just down here at the village, and it's just a very simple edge of rock, and the water comes over it at quite a broad width, and we get salmon and trout jumping over there at the right season. And I just sat there and did this. I want to practice more water. Water is one of the things which I won't say I struggle with, but it's something I think I could improve on. So I went down, sat down there, and just did this simple watercolour. Probably took 40 minutes. Much further up the dale is another waterfall. This is a very famous one. It's called Cauldron Snout, which is on the Pennine Way, and this is the infant Tees coming down just behind here, up above the skyline, is Cow Green Reservoir, and so the flow down over these cascades is regulated. But it was a nice place to sit, and this was later on in the month, and the water sort of fans out at the bottom. Difficult thing to paint, but it was enjoyable to go out and have a practice. And that's what I treat all of these pictures as, just purely as a practice. I don't sell these books. I love flicking through them and seeing where I could improve my skills, and so it is with this one. Drew it first, a little bit of watercolour, and just sat and enjoyed the scenery. Pleasure to be out, and if I can do some painting at the same time, all the better. This one was a bit of a disaster, and I'm happy to show ones that don't work out very well. This lane that goes down, it's in Teasdale near Mickleton, and it's called Rommelcourt Moor. And there's a long lane that comes up here in the foreground, which we were on, and this dry stone wall which goes down and contours over the small rises. And in the distance there's a nice copse of wood, and again the heather was out. But the funny thing was this, I started working on it, and it came on to rain. It just started to spit, so I put the sketchbook down on the ground, and it was a bit muddy, and as I'm turning around to put something away or whatever, my dog Bailey, he came towards me, and he had muddy paws, and he stood right on the edge here and messed it up a bit, and so there's muddy paw marks all over here. But it's a memento of the day. It's not ruined. It's just, I mean, I wasn't going to do anything with it anyway, but I can just see this paw mark here, and I'll always remember him for doing that. And on the day when the weather conditions weren't perfect for outdoor painting. All of these are done on site. I haven't done any of these here in the studio. They're all done on site. This is a nice composition for a painting, which I'll do in the future. Again, pen and wash, is a view of Barnard Castle, the now famous Barnard Castle. And it's the view looking down a nice little alleyway with a couple of houses either side, and it focuses your attention on the ruins of the castle sitting up just on the other side of the river. The River Tees is just in this gap here. Very nice, simple, and I like the straightforwardness of this with a strong sky. Would make a nice painting sometime. Another little cottage which lies about 3 or 4 miles from where I am. This one is unoccupied, but it just seems to nestle into the side of this wood, and it's just a tiny little house, and next to it, adjoining it, is this barn, which at one time this would have been a little small holding, and the people lived in here, and their stock would have lived in there, maybe a couple of cattle or a pig or two, and then they lived there. And this is hidden away in the dale, and I love discovering these places. How I will use this in a painting, I'm not sure, but now that I know of it, and I've got this as a reminder of where to go and what it looks like. This was back over into Swaledale, and a walk I did one evening up onto Teasdale Hill, which is above Keld at the top end of Swaledale. And I walked up one evening. Heather was just about past it. It wasn't looking at its finest, but I know of this this cairn. I've been there before. This is about 8 or 9 feet high, substantial cairn sitting right on top of the hill, and I went up and did this. And the funny thing I remember about this is while we were up there, about 8 or 9 tups Swaledale rams came up, and they were so curious, and I got some great photographs of this, which of the group of sheep just standing by me. They weren't bothered about me at all, and they were looking absolutely fantastic. And then the farmer came up and had a chat to him, and I managed to get this little sketch done. But yeah, it made it a very pleasant evening, enjoyable, and this is a nice reminder of that time. Swaledale again. This is the old smelt mill, part of the lead mining, the history of the lead mining, the ruin of the smelt mill down at Surrender Bridge. And then the heather was out, and this again was a nice afternoon, but it came on to rain. Very frustrating. It's almost sometimes as if I've been out, and as soon as I get my little sketch box out, it starts to rain, as it did here. So it makes you work even quicker, but it's frustrating when the washes don't dry very quickly. But it's only a sketchbook. It's nothing that's going to go on show or even put in a frame. This is called Jack's Scar. It's a gorge just by Middleton and Teasdale. It takes some getting to, and when you get up there you have to clamber over some moss covered rocks, and it's slippy, and this narrowness of the gorge really focuses your attention, and it made quite a nice composition. And it's dark, and I really put a bit of strength into the colour here to make it that sombre look, and I'm pleased the way it's come out. Just a little bit of highlight that was in the background there of some sunshine on the trees, on the foliage away in the background, but then the way these two rocks come in, and I enjoyed that one. That's purely a watercolour with a pencil drawing to start with, and I just sat there on one of these rocks, and I'm pleased the way this one's come out. Some work really well, some I'm not bothered about, but yeah, this was a good one. Again, near here, another ruined barn. We've got plenty of ruined barns and houses, and they make great subject, even though they can probably be a little bit depressing in a full painting. But yeah, a pen and wash again, strong sky, plenty of green in the grass, and then the dry stone wall tumbled down with the pen giving it the nice bit of detail. I went up to High Force one day, and I was sitting there, and the rain absolutely rattled off the top of my camper van. So I had a cup of tea, and I thought, well, I don't want to waste time, so I sat and did this. This is purely invented. And sometimes if I think that I've got a bit of spare time on my hands, or I want to just practice anything, I sat there in the camper van waiting for the kettle to boil and the rain to pass over, and I did this in about 10 or 15 minutes. Very simple, and just a simple composition with a landscape with a bit of a pool here, and then I wanted to get a bit of a nice light in the sky, and then I let it dry, and then thought I'd just pop in a couple of skeiner geese, which I did. Nothing to it, but good practice. This is what makes it, you know, the way the wet and wet technique, knowing when to put the right amount of colour in and when to let it bleed one into the other, and not being too worried about the exactness of colour, making them a bit more dramatic if necessary. But yeah, a bit of practice, and I like that one. Whereas what I did is I had a walk to High Force, got there, fairly pleasant afternoon, and did the drawing of this, and I was just putting some washes on, and it absolutely came on to belt down. It was just a really heavy shower, and it made all the washes go into the other, and it's very diffused, but it reflects the day, and that's what I remember about this day, just it being so wet. There was no shelter up there, and I just did this, and you can see there it splodged a bit round before I shut the book before it dried. But you don't get much choice when you're out painting in the open air. If you get caught out, you get caught out. This is a single Scots pine tree which sits on a hill just above the village of Bowes here in the Dale, and it's got a really interesting shape. It bends over at the top and sort of hangs down on this side. And Scots pines to me always have got a lot of possibilities in them for paintings, because the bark on the tree tends to be a really nice, rich, almost a russet colour, and then the richness of the pine needles, they work really well. And it was complemented this time by heather in full bloom right on the edge of the hill. Now these two I did when I was out over in the Lake District on a hill called Hughsky Hill, which is one of Wainwright's outlying fells. And I did this small pencil drawing of a boundary stone, and then later on I was looking for the best view to paint this Hughsky Hill. Of all the Lake District hills, this is one of those which hasn't got an awful lot going for it with possibility for painting, but I have to do a painting of this sometime in the near future, and I sat and painted this one on site as people were walking past. And these two appear in a film which I'll put a link to at the bottom. It's on my YouTube channel, which you may have seen before, and it's Hughsky Hill. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put a little card up here so you can link to it directly, and it just shows you while I'm out about painting this. Another day where the weather spoiled it, a lovely pack horse bridge about 3 or 4 miles from here. Very old, very unusual pack horse bridge, which I'll go and do another painting of sometime. And it's very straightforward, goes over a small beck, and then a lovely old bridge with a sort of style as you get in towards it. And went there, thought I'd get a drawing done, did the drawing, get the paints out, and look at it. It's even when I put it away, it was so wet. It's soaked up like blotting paper onto here, and there's no definition in this at all. But there was no time to hang around. I couldn't do any detail on this with pen because it was just too far gone. I could have worked on this when I go back to the studio, but to be honest, I don't bother. I just leave them as I did them on site, good or bad. They just sit here in the sketchbook. Another nice house here in the Dale. This is called Levy Pool, which is on the Pennine Way. If anyone's done the Pennine Way, you'll have walked past this. If you've done the Bowes Loop section of the Pennine Way, and it's the only thatched cottage, heather thatched cottage in probably the northeast, but definitely here in the Dale. Very steep pitch to the roof, and these little barns which join onto it, and it's hidden away amongst the trees, and it's backed by the moorland. Stood there, leant against a wall, and did this as a painting. Pleased with that one. That's a nice little study. Getting near the end, and this is close to that last picture of the Levy Pool. Actually, this is on Bowes Moor, and we have some lovely outcrops of gritstone just poking their way through the landscape. And this one, the heather just seems to be sort of grabbing around it, and it was in full bloom, and this will make a nice picture. They're not just like big lumps of rock, they've got these striations in them, and it makes them very interesting, especially for if the light is right. And I like this. I think there's potential in this for a painting with some grouse coming around the corner or a few sheep tucked in here, and I see that as a potential. And that's it. That's the little sketchbook that I did in August. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link this onto a page on my website, and that I'll put in as a link down in the description. So if you want to, you can go to my website and you can go and have a look, because I've scanned all of these pictures and you can look at them in closer detail. But at least you know a little bit about the background of these pictures in this little sketchbook. If you've liked what I've shown you, do click the like button as ever, and I'd be more than happy to hear your comments. I paint as a job, but there's always room for improvement, and if you want to make a comment about things I could do to be better, or if I've inspired you to go out and do the yourself, then that's brilliant, because it's just the pleasure of going out painting. You don't have to earn big money at doing this game. It's a pleasure thing first, and going out and painting outside means you observe the landscape more, gets you out into the fresh air whenever you can, and you see more things. You while you're sitting there doing a painting, you'll see things that you probably wouldn't have done if you just were walking by. But again, if you've enjoyed what I do click the like button, and if you haven't done so already, then subscribe to my channel, and if I get a good enough response, I'll do a few more, and I'll talk through another couple of sketchbooks, which will hopefully inspire you to go out and do some of the painting yourself, wherever you live. But as I always say, thanks for watching.